What's the problem with Chelsea, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I'm going to tell you today in this video. We're going to take a deep dive dissection comparatively to both the other Premier League and indeed European giants, Liverpool and Manchester City, from an article Matt Law wrote for The Athletic on the 20th of January. Completely highlights the situation here. We're going to look at this closely and talk about this. Something that I've referenced before, but it rings true now more than ever. And actually, Matt Law, I think, recently retweeted about it, talking about, this is the situation. And to be honest, man, yeah, it rings true now more than ever. So this is something we're going to look at. We're going to talk about. There is stuff also going on with the takeover, but we'll reference that as things develop. I want to put a pin in that. I will do video on it maybe later today, if not certainly tomorrow. So make sure you keep it locked and ensure if you choose to subscribe, you have the bell turned on. And thank you to everyone who drops a like on the video, because it takes a second and it does help you out. But this is going to be an insightful video, hopefully, and really give you context about where Thomas Tuchel is and where Chelsea is in the pantheon of greatness and consistency. But this video is brought to you by ding 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 SPITCH, my favorite fantasy football game that you are going to like if you like thinking about football. And I'd like to hope most of my viewership are more into the thinking of football. SPITCH basically utilizes an OptaStats engine in terms of how it governs a point system on their fantasy football, which already makes it the best fantasy football. On top of that as well, you don't have to commit for a season. You can just play every weekend. It's free to play, and not only is it free to play, you can win money on it. You can either win there's prize leagues and stuff. You can also do wagers. You can play managers from around the world, etc. It's ruddy wicked, and like I said, it's free at the moment. Sign-ups are for the UK, Germany, and Austria. So I know a lot of viewers I've got in the UK, but I've definitely got some German and Austrian viewers. Regardless, do check it out. Click the link in the description to go check out SPITCH now. It's a lot of fun, and it's bloody wicked. So check it out. Click, boom. Okay then, so I will be referencing this article from Matt Law down in the description for your information, for reference, to cite the work, to give you guys context. Like I said, it's from a couple of months ago. A bit more than that, actually. It's just the end of January. So, but it's basically, he did some information, research is the word I'm looking for, at Man City and Liverpool and how they're run and what the issue is with Chelsea. And this rings true now. Chelsea had a wobbly January or December, didn't they? So it was probably coming off that. But it rings true now more than ever, man. One squad, 6 managers, Chelsea's cocktail of chaos, and that is Chelsea, a cocktail of chaos, leaves the title a distant dream. And this was months ago, mate, or a couple months ago. So let's talk about this. The first team squad listed on Chelsea's official website was signed by 6 different managers, dating all the way back to when Cesar Azpilicueta arrived at Stamford Bridge during the brief Roberto Di Matteo reign of 2012. What a time. Good time, though. Won the Champions League, like we recently have with Tukes. Tukes, I like them. A glance at Manchester City website, the Premier League champions-elect as things stand, might tell you why injuries, coronavirus cases, managerial decisions, and money may not be the only places to look while trying to assess why Chelsea keep facing the same old problems, ladies and gentlemen. Chelsea, in many ways, have become the ultimate cup team. Of course, that was a buzz phrase going around, Chelsea are a cup team. In a squad capable of beating anyone on their day, focusing on a specific task, best proven by last season's Champions League final success over City, and the fact how Tuchel became the first manager to reach the Champions League, Carabao Cup, and FA Cup final, which is actually a pretty impressive stat, and kind of surprising. Well, not surprising, because Champions League finals are rare. And of course, he's reached another FA Cup final since. Great work from Tuchel, but really branding Chelsea the ultimate cup team, which is a good thing. It's not an insult, but it's like a backhanded, neggy compliment in a way, isn't it, when you're trying to be what we're trying to be. But the recurring problem is trying to catch City. So at the time, we're 12 points behind City. I think that's further now. Having played a game more would suggest Chelsea are not the team that can sustain a title push and recover, easy for me to say, recover quickly from the bumps in the road and hurdles that present themselves. Tuchel has made some bad decisions during Chelsea's latest poor run. You could say he's done the same since. But the fact is, the current situation is surprisingly similar to what happened with Frank just before his sacking last year would once again suggest the club's cancel culture has come to the end of its course. So pause. Yes, I agree. I think the club's cancel culture has come to the end of its course because Roman Abramovich isn't here anymore, so that's going to be different. And the landscape's changed with City, and this is going to go on and explain why, so keep it locked, but why City and Liverpool are successful in the Premier League campaigns, like season titles, English yen, and why we're not. It did work before, spending loads of money, but it doesn't always work. And you can just look at Manchester United for an example of it not working, essentially. You know, Fernandinho joined City a year after Azpilicueta moved to Chelsea. But apart from that Brazilian and Raheem Sterling, every single first-team player listed on the club's website was signed by or for, as in the case of Kevin De Bruyne, Pep Guardiola. One manager, one vision, one set of rules. So the only two players that were signed before him were Fernandinho and Sterling. Fernandinho's been so important for him. Sterling is a proper Guardiola forward in terms of look at the sheer numbers he scored, run into the box from a Pep Guardiola team cutback, ding dong goal every time. All his vision. Not just the personnel, the club, the owners built Man City for Pep Guardiola's arrival. Think of like all the staff they got in from like the Barcelona people. They made it like landscape conducive to success. You build your own team here. And they finished fourth the first season, even with that preparation. So they needed like a couple of transfer windows with Pep in the door, even though they did all the prep for him. Do you see what I'm saying here? So that's a really good example. And Liverpool is similar, right? So Liverpool's website tells a similar story. Jordan Henderson was signed from Sunderland a year before Azpilicueta joined Chelsea. But the midfielder and Divock Origi are the only first-team squad members that have not been signed by Jurgen Klopp. Again, one manager, one vision, one set of rules, ladies and gentlemen. And much like Fernandinho, Jordan Henderson is a great example of a player that just works for that manager's system. And, Divock Origi is like a vibes cult hero that scores big goals, so kind of works out for them. So let's talk about Chelsea, man. It would be hard to define just what Di Matteo's style of play was. Harsh but fair and true. But it was the Italian, it was Di Matteo, Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, Maurizio Sarri, Frank Lampard, and Thomas Tuchel. Said all of their players, even though Tuchel's only had Romelu Lukaku as a permanent signing, and though I think he did agree and sign off on it, amongst speculation of, is it a Tuchel signing, is it not a Tuchel signing? I think it was probably an opportunity presented to him rather than, right, we have this data, we have this scouting that's going to work in your style, who do you want? That's what we need to start doing, not like, oh, I've got loads of talented players, because Chelsea do have loads of talented players. I've always maintained this. I've never been like, oh, he's a crap forward, get him out. Hudson-Odoi, Ziyech, Pulisic, Werner, Lukaku, Havertz, Mount, they're all good and talented in their own way and offer the things, but there's no collective process here. They're all just there for different reasons, and that's why we're so far from the City and Liverpool ethos. And yet all these managers have different styles, amen, philosophies, indeed, preferences in formation, of course, and tactics, yes, and the rule books. And again, on top of that, you can add preference and psychological profile and attitudes and what they deem to be a good player mentally, and that's all going to differ from different managers. Like, wild, man. So yeah, this obviously this was done on the 20th of January. Hakim Ziyech, Chelsea's goal scorer in the latest draw against Brighton, which means Tuchel's team has now dropped 20 points in 13 games, is a good example of how the churning coaches can impact players. The Moroccan was very much a Lampard signing who moved to Stamford Bridge in the view of playing a 4-3-3. Injuries have not helped him, but it's clear Ziyech has struggled to fit into Tuchel's favourite system. Since then, we played a 4-1-4-1 formation that suited Ziyech and made him look like an absolute world-class baller, like the best player in the world. I was tweeting jokes like, oh my god, he's the best, because he just cooked, he looked amazing. But that didn't get the best out of everyone else, and it was reliant on Ziyech having like Hazard-level games, even though he looked like for a while he could be that influential. But it's not the answer. The answer is a collective philosophy and long-term vision and long-term planning, which Chelsea have just simply lacked forever. It's probably no coincidence that Ziyech made a better contribution on the rare occasions Tuchel switched to a back four. So it does go on to explain that here. Right, there's a lot more in here. I'm not gonna speak about it all. Because it's behind a paywall and I've linked it down in the description. It's an old article, so I'm sure, Matt wouldn't mind. But, yeah, he does wind up saying this: a club must back a coach, not just sack another one. Lampard perhaps went to the closest to making a statement by shipping David Luiz off to Arsenal, but there has not been a manager able to embark on that kind of clear-out. Guardiola instigated over 2 years between 2017 and 19. Think of the Joe Hart situation and stuff like that. Guardiola was yet to still win any silverware when City were allowed to start selling players off. So he'd already done a season, just about finished fourth, didn't win any trophies, had the club prepared for him, had some signings already waiting for him, but despite that, he was given time and patience, and boy did that pay off. City was allowed to start selling off players who helped deliver trophies and titles for the club, such as Gael Clichy, Alexander Kolarov. Kolarov was a good player for City, man, you forget. Samir Nasri, Fernando, and then there was Yaya Toure. Do you remember that? The fallout between Yaya Toure is a Premier League legend, man. And he represented this new age of City that made him good, like Mancini, Pellegrini. Do you know what I mean? Title-winning City sides. It was Vincent Kompany and Aguero and Yaya Toure. And he's just nope, don't fancy him. He doesn't fit the idea. Get him out. And there was loads of trouble about that. Joe Hart and Fabian Delph. If Chelsea are to become a title-winning team again, then they may require the club to back a manager in clearing out some players who have won trophies but would still be capable of delivering the FA Cup and Champions League here or there. So that's what makes it so difficult. Although we haven't won the FA Cup in ages, but we won the Champions League. So I was like, oh look, you're right. And the 2 years before we won the Europa League. It's good. It's great, and the Champions League's amazing, obviously, and it's a bit of a sort of amazing journey we had there of great performances in that competition. But it didn't reflect a stable, solid club with long-term planning, and neither did the Europa League. We've been miles off since we won the league 5 years ago, half a decade ago now, which isn't the worst, but it's pretty bad. 5 turned into 10 very quickly, and then you're Man United. We've been so far off the pace of the top. In terms of how many points we've been off top, it's crazy, man. We've not been in the title race. We've not been in the title race for half a decade, and that's all because of the club long-term planning of Manchester City and Liverpool. Again, Ferran Torres and Leroy Sané, they've referenced other really high-value players that they've just sold because Pep, was just sanctioned it essentially, although sanctions are a word that I feel like we can't use anymore. What do you guys think though? I thought this was really compelling, and I really wanted to talk about this because when people start whinging about players, attitudes, I get it, and maybe the manager decisions, I get that too. It's all valid, but at the same time, we need to start all rowing in the same direction. Players are good and talented, and they will turn up sometimes in certain games, but ultimately, to win a Premier League, it's system-based, it's philosophically based with long-term planning. Chelsea haven't got that. Chelsea haven't had that for a long time, and Chelsea need to start that now with the new ownership. So comment down below. Please do consider dropping a like and subscribe, and I'll see you very soon. Peace.
You ain't so tough with that bad boy tuck. I'ma get it how I'm living, I'ma walk the walk. Outline my lines, I rap through thought. Body bag the verse, outlined in chalk. In my life seen trouble, hustle on the double. Silence on the trigger like my pick got a muzzle. Yo chick like to guzzle, bad boy stay in trouble. I only love this paper, sorry I don't. I love me baby.